What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. Once again, another still worth it video, and this is a phone that really just came out, in 2018. It's not an old phone at all, so that I'm already going to answer the question, is the iPhone XR still worth it in 2020? Obviously, yes, it's completely worth it. Okay, there's really nothing too much wrong with it. There's just a couple quirks here and there, and I do have kind of a little update on basically the whole entire phone since its release. I bought it day one, and I've owned it since then, and I've compared it to every single major phone that's came out in America for the most part. I've been using it on all the iOS versions, and I do have some opinions on some things here and there, which I'll discuss throughout this video. Now, like I said, this thing came out in September of 2018, so it'll be 2 years old this year. So it's not that old at all. It's still completely fine. It's completely worth it. However, what we are seeing is that later on this year, we're going to be getting 4 new iPhones as well as the iPhone 9 or SE2, whatever they're going to call it. So we're potentially going to be getting 5 more iPhones, and that makes me think that the iPhone XR is not going to be sold later on this year. But on top of that, the design might change quite a bit for even the base model iPhone XR and iPhone 11 successors. So the design might be a little bit changing throughout the later part of this year, which I'll get into in a second. But so far, it's going to be perfectly fine. Obviously the iPhone 11 looks pretty much just like it. On the front, we have a 6.1-inch liquid retina IPS panel, and you know what? Before it came out, I made that video talking about why I didn't like the iPhone XR before I even had it, and I have to stop doing it. But that was my first impressions of it, and now after actually owning it and using it since the day it came out, honestly, it's not bad. When I'm using this phone, I don't think in the back of my head oh my god, this panel feels so bad or whatever. Now, I think this kind of doubles, I think the quality isn't that great. It's an 828 by 1792 panel. It is over an HD panel, so that's good. You have 326 pixels per inch. It's not an OLED panel, it's an IPS panel, which isn't that bad. But I think the best thing about it is that front panel feels like a very premium panel still. And with a lot of budget phones that I have that are even 1080p, I'll give you an example like my Galaxy A30 or Galaxy A20, whichever phone of one of those I think is a 1080p or whatever. Even that panel on the front just doesn't feel that great. It feels like a cheap plastic panel. So even though that one is an OLED and it's supposed to be way better and it's supposed to be just a really great budget phone, the iPhone XR screen feels more premium and it gives the illusion that it is better. And I also think the calibration with the True Tone also helps out a lot, so that's a huge thing going for it. So that screen definitely isn't a bad thing right now in 2020 in my opinion. You might have a separate opinion, but for me, I use an 11 Pro every day and this screen doesn't seem that bad to me. A lightning port at the bottom, no headphone jack, on the back a glass back and a single camera setup. And I think this phone on the outside still feels very good. I think they took a really interesting approach with the chassis of the phone. It feels kind of on the cheaper end, but especially when we compare to like a XS or an iPhone 11 Pro or something. But I don't think it's a bad design phone. I think it's still is holding up quite well. There's a little bit of bezel around the display as well, but like I said, the iPhone 11 is more or less the same, so it's not really that big of a deal. This thing does have IP67 dust and water resistance, which is also cool. You can go up to 1 meter of water for 30 minutes. So ultimately, in terms of the outside, that's really pretty much it. There's not much more to hit on. It's very normal. It's a very basic phone, and like I said, the design might change with these next upcoming iPhones, but this one will still be somewhat relevant. I think they're still going to sell the iPhone 11s in the store just like how they're selling the iPhone 8s and 8 Pluses, so I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. So the body has definitely held up in 2020 standards. Now moving on to the software side of things, this thing was released with iOS 12. You are able to upgrade it right now to iOS 13.3. We just got the 13.3.1 beta 2 yesterday, and Apple is just taking their times with these software updates. I wish they could speed up a little bit more so we can get official builds. A lot of people are having problems, but regardless, this thing is just getting started with software updates, and I cannot specify that enough, and I cannot say that enough. This thing, is not even halfway done with its life cycle. It's going to be getting like iOS 14, iOS 15, probably even iOS 16, who knows? It's going to be lasting for a very long time. And by that point, probably by iOS 13, maybe 14, 15, I don't know, a jailbreak might even come out for these devices. So hopefully, these developers and everything can go push a jailbreak out for these things too. Something hopefully similar like to that checkra jailbreak that we saw, that would be really, really cool. But in terms of the overall software, it's been really nice. Software updates are on time. Obviously, you guys know it's going to be a very, very good life cycle for this phone. And the best part is that's not expensive. Like it's $599 in the used market. It's much cheaper. You can get this phone now and just keep it for many, many years and not feel like you have a phone that's going to be outdated in like a year or two, because the software updates really prolong the life of this phone, which is really, really cool. So in terms of software, you're going to be set. Hopefully a jailbreak comes out for this thing so I can go and discuss it with it. But ultimately, on the software side of things, you're going to be perfectly fine. I wouldn't even worry about it. That's like the least of your worries. And moving on to the performance side of things, I think this is the part you guys want to hear about. This thing had the Apple A12 Bionic chip, a hexa-core CPU, and there were 3 different models of the iPhone XR at 64, 128, and 256 gigabyte variant. All those models had 3 gigabytes of RAM. And what I can tell you about the overall performances is that it still holds up in 2020. You know, it's not a slow phone. It's one of the fastest phones still. Really, whatever you're going to do with it day by day, it's going to be fine. I think you guys are already expecting that. It's not a slow phone at all, you know, but it kind of depends on what you're doing with it. If you're expecting to do a lot of multitasking, you know, opening up a bunch of, you know, big apps in the background, you might notice that some apps might crash here and there, but that's really with any iPhone that has 3 gigabytes of RAM. With the newer ones, we have 4, but in terms of the performance side, once the app is loaded and you're using it and everything, it's perfectly fine. Like it doesn't feel any slower or faster than like my iPhone 11 Pro, so it feels very, very good. What I will say though is that, and this is the plus point for the iPhone XR, is when I was comparing my iPhone XR versus my iPhone 11 and 11 Pro in my speed test that I was doing, I saw that RAM management, you know, with the 3 gigabytes of RAM that the iPhone 11 has versus the 4 gigabytes of RAM that the iPhone 11 and 11 Pro have, I saw that the iPhone XR was better on the RAM management side, and I just found this out like a month or two ago. So RAM management on the 11 and 11 Pro isn't really that good, even though it has more RAM. So that's a really, really huge red flag. I'm not really too sure what's going there. So as of right now of me making this video, the iPhone XR has better RAM management than the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 11 Pro, which is pretty crazy to think about. I mean, you're paying more money for those phones, yet this one is technically performing better. So RAM management on the iPhone XR is very great. You can store, obviously, like I said, if you have a bunch of apps in the background, sometimes, you know, I noticed that once I started reloading them back up, I saw them kind of glitching up a little bit more than the iPhone 11. But at the beginning with the iPhone 11 was crashing way more often than the iPhone XR. So in terms of performance, what I will tell you is it's a very, very good performing phone still. There's really not too much to hate on it. Of course, there's some things here and there, but overall, still a very, very tremendous phone in terms of performance. Now, hitting on the camera, this thing has a single 12 megapixel camera on the back. It is a wide angle lens. You have optical image stabilization, which is cool. You're able to shoot 4K videos at up to 60 frames per second on that back camera, which is really cool, and I love seeing that. On the front, you have a 7 megapixel camera. You can shoot 1080p at up to 60 frames. Now, talking about that back camera, I do think that this camera is still a tremendous camera. You know, it has a lot going for it still. You have portrait mode, which is really cool. You know, stock iOS has really not that many features. The camera app, it doesn't really have that many features built in, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. But I will say, and in terms of quality and everything, it's like perfectly fine. There's really not too much to hate on it. Like I said, there are some like small things here and there that could probably like, you know, rub me the wrong way, but I think it does a really good job at, you know, taking photos. And I even did a comparison between the iPhone 11 in terms of the camera, and I saw that the quality of the photos were pretty similar. There were some things here and there, but really it was almost the exact same thing. What I did see though is that the biggest disadvantage for the iPhone XR would 100% be that camera. It only has a single camera lens, and this is kind of how you take it. It's like a catch-22. It really doesn't matter for a lot of people probably, but if you're somebody who wants to, you know, have the future proofing or like prolong the life of the phone for that matter, you don't want to feel like you're outdated, especially when you look at a new phone. You don't want to feel like you have a super old phone. And with the 11 Pros and with the S10s and the S20s about to come out, with those phones having multiple camera lenses, you could probably feel like you're missing out on some things, and that's probably the biggest disadvantage. So with this phone, its single camera is really, really good, even still in 2020, but you're missing out on those extra camera sensors that the newer phones have. So the telephoto lens, the ultra wides, all that stuff, the newer iPhones have it. This one does not have it, which kind of sucks, but the quality is still really, really good. So take it how you will. It's just kind of a use case. Do you need it? Do you not? That's really the only disadvantage with this camera. There's really not too much else to hate on it. So Ending it off with the battery life, this thing has a 2,942 milliamp hour battery, and I have some really good news. Okay, so like I said, I bought mine the same day it came out. I've used mine extensively for all my speed tests, camera comparisons, all that stuff. And with a battery, with a phone battery, you're not supposed to let your phone battery die all the time. You're not supposed to let it go fully 0% and then recharge it and have to, bring it back to life. You're not supposed to do that, but I do that a lot on my iPhone XR because I don't use it as my main phone. It's just, a testing phone. And I saw that, dude, my phone still holds up. Like, I have like almost 100% of my battery health still on my iPhone XR, which shows, the amount of stuff this phone can take in terms of battery. So the battery is actually really, really good on this phone in terms of longevity and in terms of you using it and battery life. It's actually really good still. And that's a really good thing. I love getting a phone and getting a device and not having to worry about every little thing wrong with it. Some phones here and there, we run into issues all the time. Sometimes the camera's faulty, sometimes this touchscreen stops or whatever. And a lot of people were saying that the iPhone 10 phones like that had really bad battery health and it would die. I didn't really see that being the case on my iPhone 10, and my iPhone XR is the same exact way. So iPhone's battery health doesn't degrade as much as I might think, and the battery life is still really, really good on an iPhone XR, which is really, really awesome. So to kind of sum up the video and answer the question, is the iPhone XR still worth it in 2020? Well, I've already said it about 1 billion times in this video. Yes, it's completely still worth it. There's really not too many phones out there that I would recommend more than the iPhone XR. It's a really, really good price. It's super competitive in terms of performance. Compared to every other phone I tested it against, it really is about the same, if not a little bit better here and there. The camera quality is still great. The battery life is still great. Your wireless charging, that newer type of design, which is awesome. And like I said, there's not too much to hate on it. It's a cheap price as well. You can probably pick one up for less, around $400 in the used market, $599 brand new, and you can't really go wrong with either one. So I'll tell you, if you have an iPhone XR or if you're planning on getting one, you're going to be doing yourself a favor. It's a tremendous phone, and like I said, there's really not too much to hate on it. So if you have any questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit that like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate it if you guys could check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.